So we just watched Speaking in Tongues documentary in our bilingualism class this week, and we just thought we would say a few words about how we feel about it. And from my perspective, I grew up in a very rural town where it was pretty much English only, and other languages are looked down upon along with other cultures. And so when I moved to a more urban city in middle school, I started taking Spanish classes that I really enjoyed, and then ended up minoring in Spanish in my undergrad, and that was a really great experience. And now I'm able to have interactions with Spanish-speaking clients for speech-language pathology, which are all in the program. And I think it's really important for the community to have clinicians and people and interpreters that can interact with multilingual and bilingual people. And it's important to be aware of other cultures and other languages. That way they can receive the same type of services as everyone else.
And then to kind of go off that, there won't be a need for interpreters if we were bilingual. We wouldn't have to have that, and then we wouldn't have to rely on others, and there wouldn't be misinterpretations. So that would be something that would kind of just be taken out of the equation, and to be able to provide children that type of service is something that is lacking right now in our field. And I was born in a multilingual household. My parents are immigrants. One's from Egypt and one's from El Salvador. So my mom speaks Spanish, my dad speaks Arabic, and and I learned both languages growing up, and I was able to speak both. But once I started school and I was integrated in a language or an English speaking community where most of the children were only speaking English, I kind of lost the Arabic because my dad was working more. I was in school, I wasn't seeing him. I had most of my interaction with my mother. So I kind of still maintain the Spanish. I would say that I'm somewhat fluent in Spanish, but my Arabic has been completely lost, at least my expressive Arabic. I'm able to understand it more than I can speak. But that's something that they talk about in the movie, which is there's a generational gap where you have parents that can speak another language and their children are losing it once they're immersed in an English-speaking school. So these immersion schools are really cool because they're immersed in a school where they're speaking mainly another language and they're getting English outside, and so they're growing up learning two languages, and that's something that is really beneficial in our society. So,
and to spin off that, these children that are introduced to these languages at early ages, I think the video said around the age of 13, before 13 is when they grasp these languages. I was not introduced to a foreign language until high school, where I took Latin, and that's not even a spoken language. So it wasn't until my freshman year of college that I was introduced to Spanish, and even then I only took the required 2 years. So I only learned the labeling, the nouns, a few verbs, but never like the grammatical structure of how to speak the language.
But even then, just learning that little bit, don't you think it probably helped you out in some of your later classes, especially anatomy and physiology, to learn those type of vocabulary? So I think it's always beneficial, and I know that some of the parents in the movie were kind of hesitant. They were thinking that if their children learned another language, they might not learn English to the full capacity that they should. But in the movie, they were actually saying by learning the two languages, they're actually surpassing their monolingual classmates.
Peers.
Yeah. So that's definitely something to think about. And one of the things that really struck me was that the one girl that was saying that she wasn't able to communicate with her grandmother because her grandmother only spoke Chinese and she only spoke English. And that's something that I personally have with my grandmother, that I can't communicate with her in Arabic. And that just kills me because there are certain things that I would love to tell her, stories that I would love to understand. And, I always have to have somebody interpreting, but it's never the same, so you kind of lose that cultural, and it's just, it's just something that is going to be lost over time. And if you maintain that, you maintain the cultural entity of the family as well. So
Yeah, I think that being bilingual or multilingual is an asset in multiple different facets of life, whether personally or in the business world. These days, they're always looking for um, people that know different languages because they don't have to, like we said, do interpreters or
Mhm.
get interpreters or things like that. So I think right now it's important for people who are educated in this to advocate for these new up and coming legislations that are in support of immersion schools and things like that. I think it's very important to stay active and be knowledgeable of these points.
And also, I mean, how much money do we spend as a society in interpreting documents, interpreting conversations in the medical field, in the school system, and that's something that we can kind of just cut out the middleman if we both,
Mhm.
if we all know some other language other than English, and just I mean, that's something that that you have to think about, and the money that is spent to learn languages in college, where we're trying not to, and we're not having children learn them in the elementary school and the middle schools. We're not putting that resource in at an early age, and then you're spending all this money later on when it's not even as effective.
Right.
And some things can be lost in translation. Um, the translator might try to fill in things that they think the child is trying to say, whereas from a speech therapist point of view, you want to know exactly the way the child is saying it so you can help correct the way things should be said. And the translator may be saying what they are assuming the child is trying to say. So from a speech therapy aspect.
So, I mean, the immersion schools, I know that we had talked about it earlier, but I definitely was intrigued by it, and I would love to have my children growing up learning a language that most of the world would know, something like Cantonese or Mandarin, would be really cool, and that would just open doors later on in terms of career options. And I wish I had something like that when I was a kid.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that sums it up, right?
Yeah, we really enjoyed the documentary, and we
Thank
hope
you.
that more people will watch it.
All right.